Good morning and Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Due to the inclement weather, we will not be meeting at FCM facility today. We will miss having ONEG and fellowship with everyone along with the teaching in person, but we will be back in facility next weekend. But for now, we're just hoping and praying that everyone is warm and blessed and safe at home. And we're going to live stream Kevin's teaching of this Parsha, Vayechi, from December the 30th, 2023. In this teaching, he named it Vengeance and Forgiveness, Joseph's Legacy, which is a very, very fitting title. Now, this is a message that could be hard to receive unless you're willing to be a Joseph in a world of people who would enjoy seeing you fall by the wayside and never prosper in anything you do. Through all this hardship that we see Joseph endure as he comes to this point in his life, we should all take note of the compassion he shows to those who sought for harm to come upon him. He answers this in a godly manner and overcomes the obstacle of wanton revenge. So let's look for the hope that Joseph saw as he named his two sons in Genesis 41. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh Forget, because he said Yah had caused him to forget all of his trouble and all of his father's house. And he named the second Ephraim, which means fruitful, because he said Yah made him fruitful in the land of his oppressors. Joseph was already reconciling with the deed brought against him by his brothers, the very deed that placed him in captivity. He even reassured his brothers in the end that he would not take revenge, because Yah took the evil they meant to do and made it to be a blessing and for the lives of many to be saved through that act. I pray today that you enjoy this teaching, and remember, at the end of this, vengeance does not belong to you, but blessing your enemy does. And take to heart Psalms 23 and 5, where the psalmist writes, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows." David wrote this, understanding the blessings that God had given him, even in his time of turmoil. And years before that, we see Joseph reflecting in this same manner. He saw the blessings that Yah had put in front of him, even when he was in captivity. He put a table before him. He gave him riches, food, and the ability to bless those, even those who sought to curse him in the beginning. Enjoy the teaching today from Kevin. We will have the liturgy along with the teaching, so it will feel like a full service, and I pray that as you go into the praise and worship, your heart reaches out to the Father and you give him blessings for all he's done for you this week. We bless you in the name of Yah. As you go forward, carry that shalom and that peace of our Prince of Peace, our Messiah, Yeshua, with you in your heart. God bless.
Well, while Eric is fixing that for me, thank you. This Torah portion is Torah portion Vayechi, so it means "and he lived," and it expands about 3 and some odd chapters, so it's a pretty long Torah portion, and there's a lot to talk about in here. So I try to, leave it a little bit, maybe for next year if I go back over this Torah portion, and leave some for today, because there's just so much to talk about. Could you click to the next slide? Here are the topics that you may see on this Torah portion. Works? Thank you. So our focuses will be on the promises of God, the end of Jacob's life, Joseph fulfills his promise, and then forgiveness and retribution. All good topics that come from this Torah portion. First of all, I want to start off with a question, give you an opportunity to share. All right, you guys ready? Was there a time you prayed and your prayer was fulfilled? Raise your hand if that's a thing that happened to you. I will give you an opportunity to share if you'd like. I want to share mine. Well, not really mine, Jessica's, because it's so important. It was the end of 2019, and I was as anti having kids as anybody could be. No, didn't want any kids, all right? hated the idea, didn't want kids at all. And she and I believe some here at our congregation, they prayed excessively that my heart would be changed. And I can tell you today, standing here with certainty, that God pushed. It's not like a physical force, but like on my heart, He pushed. Think about it, a mental thing. He changed my heart. And now I have two beautiful children in front of me. Well, here and in there. They're so wonderful, and I love them so much. So God is a wonderful God who helps us, and He does, when we ask and we earnestly seek Him, He does fulfill prayers and His promises. Is there anyone who would like to share a time you prayed and your prayer was fulfilled by our wonderful God? Sharon, you wanted?
I was just going to add to that the scripture that says, the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord.
Oh, yes.
God has flipped your heart so that you did want children at some point.
Absolutely. It was a striking change. It was night and day, almost literally, yeah. But anybody want to share a prayer, a time you prayed and it was fulfilled? Yeah, Alyssa. Baruch Hashem, thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful blessing. And we're so glad that you guys are married now. And Jude, I mean, you feel the change, right? God is good. Anybody else want to share? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
First of all, Daniel was probably where you were with kids, and obviously it doesn't.
Yep.
Daniel, I mean, he's not in here, but I'll talk about him anyways. But, I was a believer when we got married. He didn't know where he stood. And, well, there's kind of been an explosion for both of us since we got married. So, but it was definitely continuous prayer. It was definitely hard to leave button out. So, most people know here I have a big mouth. So, so for him, I definitely was the father of saying, let out, baby. Let me do my thing.
Gotcha. That's wonderful.
So it was kind of quiet in the closet prayer time.
Who's in here now, so we'll stop talking about him.
Everybody singing, it's inclement. I don't even know, I guess fulfilled, yeah, it's a good choice, but at the same time, it's a fulfilled answered prayer that just keeps, going. Like, you have two now, and like Daniel, keep watching him grow, and keep feeling like our whole family's growing. So it's like he fulfills your prayers, and he continues.
He does more than fulfill, I would say, yes. Very beautiful. Anyone else want to share? Sharon, you want to share?
I would just say that we have been praying for, this church has been praying for some people to come in here who, like David, can speak in Hebrew and do the blessings for us and to add to the congregation. And he has definitely fulfilled that, and I believe he will continue to do that as we continue to pray.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here again today, David, and doing that. It's beautiful. Yeah, David, go ahead.
And that's an answered prayer, because one time I was like, I would like to go up there and say the blessings the way I learned them. And that has happened. Praise the Lord.
Baruch Hashem. It's more from voluntold now to volunteer. Well, actually, he volunteered. Then you voluntold. Now he's just like, yeah, we'll do it.
It was mutual. It was good.
Anybody else? Anybody else has an opportunity, wants to give the opportunity to share a blessing from the Lord? Okay. Well, April, go ahead. Yes.
Oh, well, this is a recent one. So Eric has had a promotion, and
Oh, yes.
in the middle of January, he should have every Sabbath off.
Every Sabbath.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, yeah, let's give a round of applause. Yes. I know he's been thinking about that. You guys have been praying about that. So, Baruch Hashem, thanks God for doing that. Dr. Lowe. David again, okay.
So, similar thing. So I've worked in the car industry and we're very busy on Saturdays. All the dealerships I've ever worked at, I've never worked Saturday, and I always got flack for it. Why the new guy doesn't have to work? I've been here 5 years and I got to work Saturday. And I'm at a job now. I'm making twice what I was making at the dealership, and all the stores are closed on Shabbat. So everybody's able to do that, and it's just an answered prayer. It's been a great job.
If God is for you, who could be against you?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll move on then. We'll talk about Joseph and Jacob and Abraham. So I know that's a rhetorical question. It's a loaded question. Does God fulfill his promises? We would all say absolutely, right? So here are some promises that God had made to not only Abraham, to Jacob, and beyond. So first of all, we have God told Abraham, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Now, we see that there's some benefit to that. Like right now, all of you here today, that proves that this is God would do this. We're all here because of what God originally promised to Abraham, that he would bless all the earth. And now we have a multitude of nations here in this room right now. Beautiful. But in this Torah portion, and even before, we see that this happens. So, for example, two portions, I think I taught this one, Miketz. There was a whole famine that had spread over the entire earth. But Joseph, because of the wisdom of the Lord, God told him, hey, go store the grain, and then you guys will be you'll have an abundance when that famine hits. And so Joseph did it. He followed the direction of the Lord. And the entire earth, as the Bible says that there was a whole famine. But look, Joseph, because he stored that grain, he saved his people from that famine. His brothers came to him and they were able to get grain. But what's more is all people from the earth, not just Egyptians or his brothers, were able to go and obtain that blessing because Joseph was in a position that God had placed him in. That's a lot of words. But in the last Torah portion, just kind of summarize. It's the last Torah portion. Joseph told the people that, you need to sell your land to the Pharaoh. In exchange, you can keep 4/5 of what you grow on your land, and Pharaoh will take 1/5. So 80%, I guess it's not too bad, especially in a time of famine. And they said to him, right here, you have saved our lives. So it's the Egyptians, even people that we might think in the Bible, we don't like the Egyptians because, we're against them because God, he executed judgment. But in these days, he saved their lives because of the blessing of Joseph. So the descendants of Abraham are blessing people. So that's true, right? That blessing is fulfilled and that God keeps his promises. Yeah, Sharon.
I have a question. Genesis 12, 46.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in both chapters?
One of the things on my list will be from 46.
Yeah, but that's two different chapters.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the next promise he promises Abraham that comes into this Torah portion is God says he's going to make Abraham into a great nation. And we see how that's fulfilled. But let's share it. At the end of the last Torah portion, it says the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen, which was probably one of the most fertile pieces of land in all of Egypt. So Pharaoh gave them the best land. And they acquired property there, and they were fruitful and increased greatly in number. It's the blessing that God originally gave to his people at the very beginning of Genesis. He made the humans, and he said that you be fruitful and multiply. And now we see that the people of Israel have been fruitful and multiplied. And by the time that they leave the Exodus, when we have the Exodus, we see that there are 600,000 men on foot, and that's not even including the children. So we go from like a small family of 70 to 1 million or more. What a blessing. So yes, God does keep his promises. He did make them into a great nation. God also promised to your descendants, I will give this land, the land of Israel. And we see that by the time of David is the one who ultimately, all of the land becomes into the possession of, God had promised, has come into the possession of the people of Israel. So I want to share that with you. I think this is the prophet Nathan says this to David. He says, this is what Yahweh of armies says. I took you from the pasture, and this is talking to David, the representative of all of Israel, from tending the flock and appointed you ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have cut off all your enemies from before you. I will provide a place for my people Israel and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. And he fulfilled that with King David and Solomon. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning, and have done ever since the time I appointed judges over my people Israel. I will give you rest from all your enemies. What a great God. tells us to David, you're going to have rest. Your people are going to have rest. You're not going to have to fight endless wars. If they, of course, listen to the voice of the Lord. Yeah, Shoshana.
Yeah, and this has another level of fulfillment when yet to come, when Yeshua ben David returns, and then all of that. You're not going to see any conflict or anything. It's going to be exactly done.
Absolutely. You see the future fulfillment and Yeshua is coming. Great. That's wonderful. Even later on, it says in 2 other chapters, it says Yahweh gave David victory wherever he went. So the God of Israel, the God of armies, has been able to go conquer all these, help David conquer all this of the land that was promised, and he did take it, and he did establish a kingdom that has not since been replicated in the land of Israel. Later in that same chapter I was just reading, David actually prays to Adonai, and I just thought it was beautiful. I wanted to share it with you. David says to the Father, he says, "Who am I, Adonai Yahweh, and what is my family that you have brought me this far?" How many of us think of this right now? We're thinking, who am I that God would bring us here today? And as if it were not enough in your sight, Adonai Yahweh, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant. And this decree, Adonai Yahweh, is for a mere human. What more can David say to you? For you know your servant Adonai Yahweh. For the sake of the word and according to your will, you have done this great thing and made it known to your servant. And then he continues. He says, how great you are, Adonai Yahweh. There is no one like you, and there is no God but you, as we have heard with our own ears. And who is like your people Israel, the one nation on earth that God went out to redeem as a people for himself, and to make a name for himself, and to perform great and awesome wonders by driving out nations and their gods from before your people, whom you redeemed from Egypt. What a powerful prayer. David is giving recognition. It's not because the people did anything great that they are a great nation at this point in time. It's all because of the Lord. All because of the Lord and what he did. He brought judgment on the gods of the nations, including Egypt, and he brought them into this land. You have established your people Israel as your very own forever, and you, Yahweh, have become their God. And then he ends and concludes by saying, and now, Yahweh God, keep forever the promise you have made concerning your servant and his house. Do as you promised, so that your name will be great forever. So he thinks, if my kingdom is great, it's because your name is great. Then people will say, Yahweh of armies is God over Israel. A great concluding prayer. So yes, we do see the fulfillment of the kingdom of Israel fulfilled in David. So here's 3 promises we've seen thus far in Genesis that have been fulfilled. And the last one here is where it's going to start touching into our Torah portion. God tells Jacob, I will bring you back again into Canaan. He promises this to him. And this is in, I think, the last Torah portion. God spoke to Israel, this is Jacob, in a vision at night and said to Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob said, here I am, he replied. And God said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. And then in last week's, this is this Torah portion. Jacob and Joseph are talking about this very event that's to happen soon, where it says the time drew near for Israel to die. So he called his son, his favorite son, and said to him, if I found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh, and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried. And Joseph said, I will do as you say. So that's what happens in this Torah portion. We actually see, Jacob also concludes by saying, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite. We'll talk more about this cave in a minute. Then there Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. So when Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed, he breathed his last, and he was gathered to his people. He died. So how is Joseph going to go fulfill this promise? How's he going to fulfill the promise he made to his dad? So Joseph went to go talk to the Pharaoh and the king's officers, and he said, "If you think well of me, please tell this to the king. When my father was near death, I made a promise to him that I would bury him in a cave in the land of Canaan, in a burial place that he cut out for himself. So please let me go and bury my father, and then I will return." Because the Pharaoh wants him back. Obviously, Joseph's super smart. He figures things out. And the king answered, "Keep your promise." What a great king to help him out. "Go and bury your father." So they carried Jacob's body. This is the whole family, even including Egyptians, parts of Pharaoh's house. They buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre. And Abraham had bought this cave in the field from Ephron the Hittite to use as a burial place. Joseph buried his father, and he returned to Egypt along with his brothers and everyone who had gone with him to bury his father. So Joseph fulfills his promise. He is in the mind of God. He understands that God fulfills promises. Joseph does the same. So I want to show you a little bit about the cave of Machpelah. Has anyone ever been to Israel, just out of curiosity? Yeah, a couple of us. Some of us have not been so blessed yet, but hopefully soon, one day. All right, so one day. So the cave of Machpelah. Machpelah in Hebrew means the cave of the double or the twofold. Now, what does that mean? There's some dispute about it. So two guys in the Talmud, they have this dispute. So Abba Arika says, and Samuel of Nehardea, they dispute. One says, oh, it has two chambers, one behind the other. And then the other one says, oh, well, but it's doubled and because it contains couples. That's why it's called the twofold or the cave of the double, or maybe even the cave of the couple. Is that possible? Well, let's go back to Genesis 49. In Jacob's his conclusion before he dies, he says, "Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field," blah, blah, blah. And then he says, "There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and I buried Leah. Go bury me there." So that's three different couples that would have been buried in this cave. So perhaps it was named Machpelah because it actually was burying couples. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives. So here's actually where they say the cave of Machpelah is to be found in Israel. It's a big fortress. It has a very complicated history. I want to show you some pictures. Inside of this, the cave that they claim is the cave, there's the tomb of Isaac. This is kind of what it looks like. It has a huge shell around it. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's in the cave of the patriarchs, or the cave of Machpelah. Here's I can't see it over there. Can you guys see it okay?
I was picturing a cave in the rock. You know, there's a rock and then there's a cave.
I think they dug it out. I think that's what happened.
Oh, they took,
Like they dug out the rock to actually have like a memorial place in there. I'm sorry?
this is in a rock?
Yeah, in rock, yeah, in stone. You're probably wondering, what is this yellow stuff and what is this blue stuff, right? Why is that labeled? Well, here's the unfortunate truth. All that yellow stuff you see is not in Israeli control. All that yellow stuff is the control of the Palestinian Authority. So that includes what they call Jacob's tomb, and Leah's tomb, and Rebekah's tomb, and Isaac's tomb, and Sarah's tomb, and Abraham's tomb. Now, there's a problem with this, right? Anybody point out the problem with having the Palestinian Authority control a couple of these tombs? If they're the tombs, as they say they are.
Is it because of Abraham's first son?
Yeah, Ishmael was not the patriarch of the Palestinian groups or Muslims. They believe that it was Ishmael, not Isaac, but yet they have control of Isaac's tombs. And they deny Jacob too, but they have control of Jacob's tomb. Because of the lineage, yeah. Yeah, Shoshana?
Yeah, I was gonna say, the problem is with the Palestinian Authority or the they're the same way that they taken or they were allowed to keep the control of Islam.
Right.
They have no right to either one of those places. And I wish Israel had never agreed that we're told not to make any deals with the enemy. And we shouldn't have let them, because once we had it in control, we shouldn't have relinquished them back to them. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah. So the Israeli authorities gave up, I think, the whole Temple Mount, right, to the Muslim authorities. So they have lost the Temple Mount, and that was a choice that they made for peace, which they have not yet achieved. Anyways, so continuing on, here's one side of the tomb. I think this is the side with Jacob and Isaac and Rebekah. Now you might be thinking, why am I sharing these pictures? Because how do we even know this is the place, right? You're probably thinking, okay, you're just sharing pictures, whatever. I want to show you this too. I just saw this yesterday. This is the tomb that they say is the tomb of Abraham. Obviously, it's got Arabic writing on it, and it's covered. There's a really cenotaph or something they call it. This kind of tomb that they made over it. So the issue with this whole thing is it is the second holiest site in Judaism. I don't know if you knew that or not. The cave of Machpelah, or the cave of the patriarchs. It's divided between Jews and Muslims. So what's weird is this side that we're looking at has two double pane glasses. So the tomb is right here. So the Jews can see it through one side, and if you look on the other side, the Muslims can see it from the other side. So it's divided. And it's actually divided between a synagogue and a mosque. So it's a very, very strange place. All right? But you're thinking, well, why does this matter at all? Because how do we really know that this is the site of Abraham's tomb? Well, the archaeology is what's so interesting about this. So they found some pottery. Some people, I won't say they stole it, but let's say that's a light term. They stole pottery. Okay, I guess I just said it, didn't I? They took pottery from the tomb, and they were able to date the pottery based on the style of the pottery, et cetera, et cetera. And it dates to around the time of David, maybe Solomon, maybe a generation later. So they know that from early times, the time of David, Solomon, the kings, this was a site dedicated to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So is it the tomb? Well, I would believe that they would have living memory at the time of David and Solomon. And they did have pottery in that tomb that dates to that time. And the pottery indicates that the tomb was a site of veneration, meaning they knew somebody important was here and they brought pottery to the site as kind of like a form of decoration or for veneration of the site. Something important was here for them. And then, lo and behold, we've had a whole history since that time that says this is the site of the tomb of Abraham. Is it his tomb? I'm not going to say for certain, but it's interesting that the archaeology might say so, yeah. Yeah, I believe it is, yeah. So it's in the right site based on what the evidence we have from the Bible. Great question. Anyways, so we can see all these promises have been fulfilled by God, right? He says he's going to bless the families, make them into a great nation. Descendants are going to come back to the land, and he's going to give the land to Joseph. Oh, sorry, to Jacob. He will be brought back to the land. I keep mixing Jacob and Joseph. It's probably the J's. So let's talk about the second part of this portion that I think is very much in the heart. Okay, about retribution and forgiveness, because his brothers did a very big wrong to him. This is the conclusion of the Joseph story, and it brings us back to the beginning of the Joseph story. At the beginning, his brothers cast him into a well, and they pretend he's dead. They kill him off, or quote unquote kill him off. That's what they tell their dad anyway. He's dead. So it comes to find out that all the wrong they did to Joseph was good because he was blessed in Egypt. So Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead. This is the end of the Torah portion. And they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? Think about that. You guys probably feel this way too. Like someone does something wrong to you and you just want to do something about it, don't you? I'm not speaking like against you. This is me too. When I feel like someone pulls out in front of me in traffic, I really want to honk my horn really loudly. Eric, I know that you do it. That's your way of vengeance, isn't it? So what they said, what if he wants to pay us back? So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you were to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of God, of the God of your father. Now, do we have record that Jacob actually said this? No. Did he say it? Well, maybe. But it seems like they're trying to say, please don't do anything against us, because he's the second most powerful person in Egypt. So certainly he could do something if he wanted to. And when the message came to him, Joseph wept. Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him and said, we are your servants, they said. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish this present result, which is the saving of many lives. Would the sons of Jacob have died due to famine if they had no food? If Joseph were not in Egypt and placed in the right place, right time by the Father? So he knew that this saved many lives from this happening. So then he said, so don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he showed compassion for them and spoke kindly to them. So as I was thinking about this, what does he mean by I am in the place? Did you want to take a picture of that? Okay. Am I in the place of God? What does that mean? Well, he didn't seek vengeance, right? He could have. He absolutely could have. As the second in command of Egypt, he did not seek vengeance. What he did instead is he acknowledged the power of God over the troubles of men. He saw, even though we're here squabbling, you try to kill me, I'm back. Anyways, it didn't matter. Let's give it to God. God gives the glory because you put me in the right place, the right time to save people. And he showed compassion for him, which in Hebrew is nacham, which means shows compassion for them, for his servants. And just like he thinks it's not his job to seek vengeance, I want to say to you, I believe that Joseph is displaying what God would want us to do, which is to not seek vengeance, but seek compassion first. Joseph didn't think it was his job as the second in command of Egypt, so why do you think it's your job? But he sought reconciliation with his brothers. He sought peace first. And that's kind of where the direction I'm going to go. But first, I want to share who is judge? Who should seek righteous vengeance in any situation at all times? Just God, right? Just the Father. Did I do something? Oh, is there? In Deuteronomy, end of the Torah, God says, vengeance is mine, as is retribution. In due time, their foot will slip, their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. He's talking about if the Israelites choose not to listen to him. But it says, Yahweh will judge his people, and we know he's a righteous judge. He would judge them correctly, and show compassion, nacham, on his servants. Just like Joseph did what he did, right? Just like Joseph. Joseph lives in the way that Adonai would have him live, showing compassion, that nacham on his servants. And we know from the Psalms that God is a righteous judge. It says Yahweh sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for justice, and he judges the world with righteousness, and he judges the people with uprightness. There's nobody on earth who could really do this except God. He's not on earth. That's not, I was thinking about that. He who takes vengeance for blood remembers, and he does not ignore the cries of the afflicted. So God is the ultimate judge, the righteous judge who decides between what is the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things. So leave it to him. Yeshua also has a similar message. He says, if your brother sins against you, go and point out his fault when the two of you are alone. And if he listens to you, you have won him over. So what's the first thing you're supposed to do if someone wrongs you, you feel offended by what someone does to you? According to Yeshua. Uh-oh. Trouble in paradise. You are supposed to go to, you as the offended party, are supposed to go and talk to this person by yourself, talk to that person, have that conversation with them. Maybe there's something that happened. Maybe they are going through a bad time. They treated you wrongly because something happened and you don't really know. And then you can, if you have that conversation, you can win them over. Right? Doesn't Yeshua's command here, even go beyond what even the Proverbs say. Solomon in all his wisdom. The clicker's not working. Oh, there you go. In Proverbs, Solomon in all his wisdom says, a brother who is offended is harder to be won over than a fortified city. So that's the person who's offended. They can't. It's almost impossible to win them over. But what's Yeshua's message here is the person who is offended, who is supposed to be a fortified city, is supposed to take their guard down and go talk to that person. He flips it entirely. He thinks this is even greater. It shows greater compassion because you guys can actually communicate. If you are the offended party and you choose to keep that wall up and choose to be fortified, you're not going to be able to have that open conversation. So that's what Yeshua thinks about here. Jessica, just last night I was talking to her about this exact teaching, and she says this in so many words. She says reconciliation is not a one-sided affair. Because if you left it for the person who did offend somebody, then you may never win the battle. But if you actually have the person who is offended go talk privately, then you could win the battle. She says communication is the cornerstone of healthy relationships. Would we all agree with that? Jude, you're learning, right? Newlywed. I'm sorry, I don't mean to pick on you. He continues, Yeshua continues. He says, if that person will not listen, take her one or two others so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. This is how you're supposed to seek reconciliation. If you can't resolve it by yourself, get some mediators, some arbiters to come in and do this talk to you and have this conversation with you. Now, so that means if there's something that's really bothering you in the congregation, are you supposed to go to me or Eric or the other Eric first? No, you're supposed to go to that person first and talk to them. But if they can't be won over, maybe, I don't know, Caleb or Daniel says, Sharon, your eyebrows are ugly. I don't know. Daniel would say that. Oh. Instead of Sharon going and saying, well, Eric, this is what Daniel said, and I just hate Daniel so much for saying that. She should have that conversation with Daniel or Caleb first before they come to anybody else. But if you can't resolve it on your own, then yeah, you have a couple more people to help you reach reconciliation. If you still refuse to listen at that point, then you got to go tell it to more people. It says the whole assembly. That would be all of us. Maybe you have your dispute, well, I don't know about all that. Having a dispute in front of all of us and see if we, what? Festivus? Oh, like an airing of grievances? Yeah. And have that conversation in front of the whole congregation. Surely someone has some wisdom in the congregation to give you advice about this, right? But even if they don't listen to that, so by themselves, with a couple witnesses, with the whole congregation, then they are like a pagan and a tax collector. There's no reasoning with them, right? If there's no reasoning with somebody, what can you do? They are excluding themselves from any reasonable conversation, from reconciliation. There's nothing you can do. Yeshua continues on, and Peter asks Yeshua, he says, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother who sins against me? Up to 7 times. I have to imagine none of you like this verse. I have to imagine some of you don't like this verse. Yeshua said, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77, or even 7 times 70 times. Is there somebody in your life right now you're just thinking of, like, there's just no way you could forgive them? I can tell you right now, it's probably my father. I don't know if I could ever muster the energy to forgive him. Well, he's dead now, but I still bear that burden because I refuse to forgive him, even though I probably should. But it weighs me down because I have not yet let go. Yeah, Sharon.
It also says in the New Testament that if we don't forget others, then our Father in heaven can forgive us.
Sharon, did you take my notes? You're right. You're absolutely right. If you don't, it does say that it's actually after the Lord's Prayer.
And it's hard. It's hard for us to do that, to forgive somebody that's hurt us or somebody that has been irritating us for years. You know, it's hard.
It absolutely is.
And
Absolutely. We need to do that so he will forgive us. We have to forgive others first. Yeah, Angela? Absolutely. Offenses are going to come. Absolutely. Yes, you have to have a heart to forgive. Can I give you guys an example? This is a person I did forgive. So my stepfather, for much of my life, I think from when I was 4 until about 11, he absolutely abused me. And when I say abuse, I mean, in some cases, ripped the flesh off my body, if you can imagine that. Okay? And so I never, I went into foster care for a long time, and I never in my heart could imagine forgiving this man for doing what he did to me. He was a torturer to me, an absolute abuser. And then one day I happened to have to run into him because my brother is his son, and we went into the courthouse, and he was trying to get my brother back from foster care so my brother could go live with him. And when I saw him for the first time, I was weeping, crying so much. And I really felt like this was an opportunity at that point to say what I needed to say because I was so scared to say it before. And I did. I told him, you abused me. You destroyed my life. And it's so hard to forgive. And he said he was sorry. And I could tell you that it's like a miracle of God. The anger went away. It absolutely does. If you're willing to forgive, God will make that way happen for you. And I will tell you, I talked to my stepfather yesterday. We're good friends now. We're good. He's come here a couple of times. We're good. And when I see him, I have absolutely no hate in my heart for him. That's what I think Yeshua means, is you have to truly forgive. As many times as possible, try to show compassion for other people. Yeshua continues in the same, he gives a parable. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Right. You are. I like how you said that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. But are you willing to give it to others? You have to. You asked it as a question. You said, will God I forget how exactly you said it. Will God forgive us? And the answer is, you need to forgive first. There's no question about it. You have to forgive first. I want to give you show you this parable that Yeshua gave. It's about the unmerciful servant. You may have seen it before if you read. Yeshua said, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. I presume this is like the end of time. Everything is coming to a close. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. And since he was not able to pay, this master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. Now, let's talk about talent. You're probably wondering why the truck picture's here. In due time, I'll explain. One talent is, in biblical times, is worth 20 years of labor. Okay, one talent. Now, the number 10,000 is the largest Greek number they can express. So Yeshua is talking about an innumerable amount of talents that are owed to this king. Think about this. 10,000 talents times 20, because there's 10,000 talents, and every talent is 20 years of labor. Do the math. 200,000 years of labor to repay this debt. What's the answer to this? Is it possible? It's impossible. This servant will never be able to pay off this debt. So some translations say he owed 10,000. Owed 10,000. NIV says bags of gold. One translation says millions of dollars. I put truckloads of money. There's the truck, okay? There's the reason why there's a truck there. Imagine a truckload of money. It's innumerable. You like stacked to the brim with cash. There's no way to pay this off. None of us can do this, right? This is impossible to pay off. And more about the talent is that if you want to go into the more nitty-gritty specifics money-wise, it's about 2,080 ounces of silver or gold. I put silver. For silver, in today's money, is about, what, $24.50 for 1 ounce. So for one talent, it's worth $50,000, almost $51,000. Now, if you multiply that by 10,000, you get a very incalculable number. Imagine this one servant racking up that much debt to his master. If I use gold, which was probably the real, what was really a talent was made of, this number is off the charts. Probably more than the U.S. national debt. Okay, that's a lot. So what kind of king would take on so much debt for his servant? Do you know anybody who would actually do this? I can only think of one who could do this, who would do this. Who would. But later, the servant says he fell on his knees before his master. And the servant said, "Be patient with me," he begged, "and I will pay back everything." Assuming he could. Obviously he can't. The servant's master took pity on him, showed compassion for him, and he canceled the debt and let him go. Just by asking, the master let the whole debt go. An innumerably incalculable debt. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and he grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. So, here's what a denarius is. This is, by the way, I picked this picture on purpose. This was a denarius from the year 3031 AD. This is very well a coin that Yeshua could have been referring to, this exact one, because they were all in circulation, just like this. That's Emperor Tiberius. A denarius is 1 day's wage, okay? So if the man owes 100 denarii, he owes 100 days' wages, all right? So we're talking about 100 days worth of wages versus 200,000 years worth of wages. Can you see the comparison here that Yeshua is doing? He's talking about pennies on the dollar versus an incalculable debt. Imagine the pennies you owe the bank or your credit card versus what the U.S. owes various foreign countries. Very, very different type of debt, wouldn't you say? And this debt could be transferred to children. So if you can't pay it, your children could pay it if you die, or your children would be sold into slavery to pay for the debt. Imagine that. It's awful. That's what happened. So when I was reading that, I was thinking, wow, what great God we have. Because he shows his judgment to the third and fourth generation of those who hate him, right? But what does he say also? He shows favor to the thousands who love him and keep his commandments. So that debt that could be transferred to children, he shows the favor, he shows the compassion and kindness that they normally would not be able to get, but he does show it to them because our God is that great. So Yeshua continues and he says, his fellow servant fell on his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me and I'll pay it back." See, exactly the same words that the first servant said. But he refused. The servant who was just given, the freedman, basically, refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay off the debt. And when the other servants saw what happened, they were mad, they were outraged, and went and told their master everything that had happened. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I would do that too. I would go say something. No mercy. The freedman was granted no forgiveness. He was given forgiveness, but he granted no forgiveness, no mercy. All right, he sought his own vengeance by throwing his fellow man, a brother potentially, into jail. Doesn't this not reflect the human heart? If you don't live in the ways of Adonai, if you choose not to live on the path of Adonai, you have a heart of stone. And God is the only one who can really, if you're willing, to let him to move it into a stone of flesh, to change it. So this free man squanders his freedom. He has this great opportunity to do exactly what happened to him. He had this opportunity to pay it forward. He chose not to. He ignores the golden rule. You guys know the golden rule, right? We teach our kids this. I mean, everybody knows the golden rule, right? So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also for them. Of course, people live out, forget the other part, for this is the Torah and the prophets. You know, this is what we should be doing, is keeping the Torah, following the prophets. But yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Do to others what you have them do to you. We say this, we recite this since we were younger, right? Taught this to our children. You've heard this. So Yeshua continues with his parable. He says, the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Just because you asked. Shouldn't you have had the mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? Just a couple pennies you could have forgiven versus the incalculable debt that I forgave. And in anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all that he owed, which is impossible. Yeah.
He's following the principle of going to the person who offended him, you know, because the person forgave the person that owed the money, so he went directly to that person and said, what's wrong with you? You know, I had mercy on you, and you can't have mercy on someone else, you know, so
Absolutely.
he's following the principle of going to that person.
Perfect. That's absolutely right. I know this is hard to say, but yeah, he does say tortured by jailers until it paid back. In Matthew 7, Yeshua says, judge not that you not be judged. Now, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you used it, will be measured to you. He's doing exactly what this person, the master is doing exactly what the servant did. You judged harshly and you threw your friend in jail. So now I'm going to judge you harshly and throw you in jail until you can pay your debt, which is impossible to actually pay. So there's a blessing and a curse in what he did. So he was blessed. He was asked for patience and time. He received freedom from his debt. He asked for money, and then he sent his fellow servant to torturers. And now he received imprisonment. Now he's being tortured, and now he's asked to pay his full debt, which is incalculable. So here's the end of the parable. Yeshua says, this is how my heavenly Father will treat you, each of you, unless you forgive your brother from the heart. It has to be meaningful. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I forgive you. You actually have to feel it. You have to mean it. It has to come from here. Because if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. The Lord's Prayer, we say it every week. It's part of our liturgy. It's part of our liturgy every week. Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. The Greek says, have forgiven. The implication is you have forgiven first before you receive the forgiveness. Lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. See what comes first? You forgive first, then the Lord forgives you. The end of the Lord's Prayer, which we leave off, but if you continue to read the Lord's Prayer in Matthew, the very next thing he says is, if you forgive others of their wrongdoings, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive you of your wrongdoings. What comes first? You forgive. Then you can be forgiven. Not just by God, too, but by your brother, too, if you forgive. So, if I want to leave you with a conclusion here, is this is your day to forgive somebody, to go reconcile something with somebody. Maybe there's somebody you're really mad at. Maybe Jamie's like, oh, I just want to choke that person. This is your opportunity to forgive them for whatever they've done to you and reconcile. And be like the Messiah. He teaches us to choose to seek mercy and forgiveness and peace first before we decide we're going to go jail people, okay, or seek our own vengeance. I want to conclude also by reading from Colossians. Paul has a great message in Colossians that he mentions exactly the same thing. And in Colossians 3, 12 through 15, Paul says, put on then as God's chosen ones, that's all of us, all of you here in this room, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, not hearts of stone, hearts of flesh, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you. So you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. It has to come from the heart. You have to love each other, and you have to seek that forgiveness. And let the peace of Messiah rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were all called in one body. Be thankful. You can't be one body unless you're seeking peace with one another. We can't be at war with one another. A divided house can't stand. You guys know that phrase, right? And Paul continues by saying, let the word of Messiah richly dwell within you, with all the wisdom, teaching, and advising one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, and singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. That's how you're supposed to seek peace. Talk to each other, advise one another, seek wisdom, seek a song, talk to each other, talk peace. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks through him to God the Father. That's what we should do, right? We seek forgiveness, we seek to forgive others, and we do it and give all the thanks and glory to God the Father.